It's not complicated to build a website anymore. No longer does it require you to learn complicated programming languages to create a website for yourself. With the emergence of content management systems, commonly referred to as CMS for short, it has become easier than ever for the average Joe to build a website. Needless to say, having the coding knowledge is extremely valuable if you want full customization and control over a website, and there's definitely a place for it. But I want to give you some methods to create a website with no coding experience whatsoever. If you're new here, consider browsing around my channel for other related content. And if you like what you see, consider subscribing to the channel. Alright, so the first method that we already briefly talked about is to learn some type of coding like HTML or CSS, but that could take months or years to learn. The second option is to pay someone else to build it for you, like using a freelancer from Fiverr. And for the most part, you can get a very basic 2 to 3 page blog setup for a relatively fair price, but you start to notice that it can get up into the hundreds or thousands if you need a more robust website, which leads us to option 3, CMSs. Essentially, CMSs, or Content Management System, is a solution that lets you build and or manage your website through a user-friendly interface instead of programming the website from scratch. So instead of using programming code, you might see a familiar interface like a word processing application or a drag and drop application to build a website. I'm going to break it down into two CMS types, all-in-ones and self-hosting. These are by no means official terms, they're just terms that I decided to use because it makes it easier for me to explain it to you guys, and hopefully it makes it easier for you guys to understand. So all-in-ones are exactly as it sounds. All-in-ones like Squarespace or Wix will provide you with the domain name, web hosting, and website builder all in one place. On the other hand, a self-hosting solution like WordPress, and we're talking about the WordPress.org, not to be confused with WordPress.com, will require you to get your own domain and hosting services so that you can install it on their web hosting server. And if you don't have a domain or a web hosting service yet, be sure to check out my channel for guides on both of those topics if you want more details. Okay, so let's go through some pros and cons, and we'll tackle the all-in-ones first. The first pro is that it is convenient. You just need one account, one login to manage your website. So you don't have to jump to different accounts or companies to access each aspect of your website. Not that that's a big deal, but it might be a slight convenience to some people. The second pro is that it is easy to learn. So this is pretty subjective, and generally all-in-ones and self-hosting are both easy to learn, but from the setup and installation process, all-in-ones are easier compared to its counterpart. All-in-ones have less of a chance of compatibility issues. Since you are using features all from one source, you're less likely to have glitches or compatibility issues. I mean, it still happens, but it's just less of it and a less of a chance of it happening. And some of them have shorter term lengths. So you can go month-to-month services with some of the all-in-one providers out there, but that leads us to the first con. It can get expensive, especially if you do decide to go to the month-to-month services. And when I say expensive, I don't mean anything outrageous or anything like that, but generally more expensive than the self-hosting solution. And another con is that you are limited to the amount of customization compared to self-hosting. The amount of customization for an all-in-one solution is capped by the layout. And don't get me wrong, its customization is more than enough for most people, but it is limited compared to the self-hosting solution. Now let's look at some pros and cons for self-hosting. The first three pros are kind of tied into each other. The first pro is customization. It's almost unlimited in regards to the amount of customization you can do to your website. And with the massive amount of customization, it has many features that you can apply and adjust to your website to your liking. And you have more flexibility on what you can do to your website, and you aren't as confined to a certain layout like the all-in-ones. The fourth pro is that you have more variety when it comes to pricing. Since you have to provide your own hosting domain, you can shop around for the best prices and features from a variety of different vendors. Not to say that you can't do the same with the all-in-one solutions, but some of them allow you to transfer your domain name from one vendor as well. So for the most part, the hosting service is provided by them. Which leads us to the first con. To be able to get the best prices for hosting, you would have to sign on to the longest term, which locks you in for at least 12 months or longer. And there is also a slight learning curve when it comes to a self-hosting solution. You do have to understand the backend of the website, like installing WordPress on the web hosting servers and making some minor configurations as well. And it goes without saying that you also need to learn the user interface if you have never worked on a self-hosting CMS before. Once again, it doesn't take much to learn it, and it doesn't really take that much time to get the hang of the user interface, but that is something you need to consider if you don't have the patience or time. Alright, so we talked a little bit about the pricing, And I don't like giving out prices because prices are always changing, and that's just the nature of the game. So what I'll do instead is break down the average general prices for both. All-in-ones generally cost $20 a month if you choose to pay the entire year up front. That includes the domain name that can be free for the first year, the web hosting service, and the custom web builder. Some cheaper plans do not include a custom domain name, so I just want you to be aware of that. Self-hosting CMSs can usually be found for free, like WordPress, but domain names can go for about $1 a month or $12 a year. And hosting plans can average around $9 a month, and some hosting plans also include the domain name for free for the first year as well. You can see that the all-in-ones are typically double the monthly price of a self-hosting solution. However, there are some outlining factors that can close the gap between both solutions, like privacy protection, premium features, SEO services, and much more. So essentially, self-hosting could cost the same or more than the all-in-one solution, and the opposite is also true. It depends on the features that you need or want. This is by no means an apples-to-apples comparison when it comes to pricing. If I went and compared every vendor to each other, this video would last forever. And as great as that sounds, I don't think you guys have time for that. However, I will be doing some comparisons for some of the more popular vendors out there, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you know when the videos get released. So what solution you choose will depend on what your needs are. If you want to have complete control over every aspect of your website, then it may be worth it to learn a bit of coding. A quicker way to learn to do a little bit of code without actually having to register to a school is to use online courses like Udemy or Skillshare. And if you just don't have time for that, then perhaps go over to Fiverr and paying someone to build a website for you is the better option. But if you're looking for an easy way to build a website without having to spend a lot of time and money, then look into an all-in-one CMS like Squarespace or Wix. And if you need a little bit more customization and control, and you don't mind putting a little bit more time to overcome a slight learning curve, then a self-hosting solution like WordPress might be for you. To me, CMSs are like the middle ground of learning to code and paying somebody else to build a site for you. Even some of the freelancers on Fiverr use CMS like WordPress to build the website for you, so why not just learn it for yourself? I mean, hey, you never know. After you learn to create a website, maybe you can be a freelancer and make some money too. And I'll be honest with you guys here, the hardest part of building a website with a CMS is the creative and design aspect, which will probably take most of your time. Regardless of what you choose, here are some popular recommendations that you can use to get started today. These are by no means the only services out there. There are just some suggestions for a use case scenario for each of them. And I'll also leave a link to my article in the description below that has all the links that we talked about today. I just don't want to clutter the description box with all kinds of links, but I'll leave some of the important ones down there. And of course, these will probably be affiliate links. It doesn't cost you anything to use, but if you do make a purchase, then I receive a little something, which helps me support the channel, so thanks in advance. And as always, thanks for watching. Help support my channel by hitting that like button and subscribing, and until next time, happy building.